Welcome to the SAMA Podcast, where we talk to the most experienced people in B2B to find answers to one simple question. How can you become and remain essential to your strategic customers? Tune in as our guests reveal what it takes to become the supplier they cannot afford to lose. Learn how to level up your account management strategies to promptly deliver speed, convenience, and success to each customer. Let's jump into the discussion right now.
Welcome to today's episode of the SAMA Podcast, where we deep dive into best practices in strategic account management. Today, we're thrilled to have Janti Masani with us. He's the CEO and founder of CXO Impact and a principal at the Summit Group. Janti brings over 3 decades of experience in sales and marketing and global strategic account management, having worked with industry giants like Abbott Diagnostics, Abbott Medical, and Roche Diagnostics across more than 70 different countries. He's a master at creating compelling value, accelerating growth, and developing strategic customer relationships. So we've asked Janti to share some insights on transformational leadership and strategic account management, and hopefully touch upon his article which will come in the spring issue of SAMA's Velocity magazine, entitled Exercising Your Heart and Mind for Strategic Account Management. Join us now as we harness the power of strategic thinking and build lasting partnerships. Janti, welcome to the SAMA Podcast.
Harvey, thank you very much indeed for the kind introduction. And I'm very excited to be on this podcast with you and looking forward to our conversation.
As am I. So let's just dive right into it. So, with this mission, this new role that you have, basically, where you've started up your own company and all, what problems and challenges are you trying to solve, Janti?
That's a great question, Harvey. With over 15 years of experience in strategic account management, the answer to that question comes quite simply to me. I think the problems that we had when I was first a SAM are the same as what we have today. And you'll remember this, Harvey. It's about how do we make great salespeople great business people. Yeah. And it's all about, we used to call it trusted advisors, and now we call it trusted strategists, but it's the word trust. And the challenge that we're trying to solve orientates around how do you build trust? And for me, in the experience that we've had, there are 2 factors where trust is built. One is how you engage with your customers. And the second one is how you communicate with your customers. Sounds kind of simple, but you and I both know SAMs have this incredible job that in engagement, they're engaging inside their own organizations, they're engaging outside of their organizations. And many of them, and I used to do this as well when I was a young SAM, we focus too much of our engagement on the whats and the hows and not on the whys, the purpose of our engagement. And on communication, Harvey, it's very similar. Customers are telling us every year, every day, you guys are too complicated. Make my life simple, less complex. So communication has to be simple, concise, and clear. And then the other thing is we're operating in such a global culture now, especially with post-COVID on the virtual side, is how do you communicate empathetically and clearly and effectively with people from all different backgrounds and languages? And last but not least, it's time. Time is so scarce. And for SAMs and for customers, it's all about speed. How quickly can you get your communication to me? And bearing in mind, communication has to be clear, concise, and precise, and simple and memorable. So it's all about communication and engagement. Those are the 2 things that we're trying to solve in CXO Impact.
And that's internally and externally.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. That makes sense. It's so easy to say and so hard to do.
Indeed
So
it is.
what strategies do you solve these challenges with differently than you've done in the past?
Yeah, no, thank you again. That question resonates with me because 2 years ago when I left corporate to come across and set up my own organization, I thought long and hard about these two challenges. And the answer that came in terms of how do we solve these differently to the way other people have been solving them also came quite simply. And that was it's to do with the humanistic part of our business. And therefore, we have to relate to those areas and focus on those. And that's why everything we do, we're focusing our strategies around two things: the heart and the mind, and how SAMs can combine how they feel within their hearts with what they think in their mind. And the combination of those two is extremely effective. And I explain a little bit. For example, when we speak about the heart, 15 years ago, if I'd spoken about this, people would have laughed because that was such a soft thing to say. And yet today, everybody's aware about growth mindset, gravitas, emotional intelligence, character. These things are spoken about, but unfortunately, not very much coaching is done in this area. And if we think about communication, a lot of organizations have been supporting SAMs with structured thinking, design thinking, framework thinking. The thinking that I'm focusing on is what we call the mind's eye. We're thinking about visual communication. How can you communicate clearly to your customers and inside your organization using visual storytelling? So those are the two things that we're focusing on. Again, it's about heart and the mind.
Amazing. No, that makes so much sense. I remember an old saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's great.
That
Absolutely. Absolutely.
seems to summarize the summarize the point. It's a really, and you're right, we do a lot of training, but it's more, I don't know, teaching
Yes.
versus letting them learn how to do it, how to express themselves and what's really inside of them. That's what you're trying to pull out of them, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, how are your strategies relevant to the current landscape of strategic account management? There's been so much change since COVID and
Yeah.
everything that's gone on in the, if you will, the roaring 20s of this new century. It's roaring, that's for sure. So,
Yeah.
how are you able to break through all that noise and get SAMs to focus on what really matters to their customers and to them the most?
No, and again, such a relevant question. I spend so much of my own personal time over the last months and years attending meetings to figure out what's going on in the landscape of SAMs. And there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and, about the global economic situation and how it's going to affect our customers. But Harvey, I'll be honest with you. I think in a very simple way, in a very clear way, and I like to boil it down to what really matters. And I'll be honest with you, the landscape of the SAM, the way I see it, is broken down in three very, very simple areas. First of all, what's very, very important for every SAM was to me, and I know it is to most SAMs, it's time. Time is a finite resource. It's also non-renewable, right? You can't replenish it. Once it's gone, it's gone. So time is of the essence, and time is precious. And the currency in which the customers work with us is to do with time. And that goes nicely with the second part of the landscape, which is for years, SAMs have been taught you have to buy the customer's mind share. You have to get and win an unfair share of their mind share. So the game is tough. There isn't enough time, and we need to buy more time. And then, yet, the third part of the landscape is there are great expectations placed on SAMs, which is what is the value that you bring? How much growth are you bringing in? What is our market share after your activity? And so on and so on. If you combine those factors, there's one resonating factor that precipitates out of that conversation. And that is in order to win more mind share, to get an unfair share of time from your customer, you have to develop relationships which are deep, trustful, and honest and respectful. And building relationships is all about the human side. And so going back to what we're doing, we're saying that whilst the landscape is tough for the SAM, it's within their own control how to be able to win that share. So we're focusing on three things to help them with that. One is what we call character authenticity. It's about helping the SAMs to become more of who they are. It's not about having everybody do the same thing, everybody say the same thing. It's about being more real about who you are and having the customer see that. That's a humanistic way to win somebody's trust and their respect. The other one is mindset. It's about our personality. RV, I was taught, a long time ago by a great sales manager I worked for. And he said to me, he said, there's one thing that you have to remember is that you don't know and you can't see it. But the moment that you walk into a room, everybody can read your personality and they can feel how you are. They'll start to judge you. So mindset is a very powerful thing. And having control of your mindset is something that we want to coach people on. How do you become more prepared to be able to control your mindset so that you can read others' mindset? And then the last one, where we want to focus on the landscape, is everybody is born, I believe, with superpowers which are physiologically ingrained in them. One of them is what I mentioned to you before, which is vision superpower, which is visual communication and storytelling. The other one is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is within all of us, but how do you make it a conscious process where you can take control of being able to tap into empathy and active listening? And then the other one is growth mindset. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on, I hope, which is going deep into what does growth mindset really do? Because it's not really just about positive thinking. A lot of people say growth mindset is about positive thinking. Think positively and it'll be fine. But actually, it's a lot more than just thinking positively. So, to kind of wrap this answer up, how are we bringing more relevant value to the landscape? It's about focusing again on the things that matter, which are humanistic, which is authentic character. It's about your mindset, and it's about these superpowers that you already have within yourself. Does that make sense, Harvey?
It does, Janti. It makes a tremendous amount of sense. And I'm just curious because you've had such broad experience over all the different countries that you've worked in and the different companies that you've worked in. When you go see a customer, how how quickly do you think can they read you? Sort of, form and start forming an opinion. I mean, do you have any sense of that? What?
I do, because I do it too. I think it's instantaneous. I think the moment that somebody walks into the room, we as humans, we judge. We judge immediately. It's like going into an interview. I think the interview is over at the moment that you step in because you make an impression. And I think what we're trying to tap into here are things that we normally don't even realize. Like we're not tapping into how the subconscious is working in another person, because everybody's feeling how they feel when somebody enters the room. And so, first is understanding how you feel. We call that self awareness. So, um, to answer your question again, I think that people judge each other. I do the same instantly. And so, before we walk into that intimate situation, I think we have to take a deep breath and we have to say, do I understand how I'm feeling? Because I'm just about to meet somebody. Am I in control of my emotions? Do I know how I'm going to come across to somebody? It's that. Does that make sense, Harvey?
It does a lot. Yeah, thanks for clearing that up. I thought that instantaneously would have been my guess, but it's different coming from someone who's focused on it and teaching it and all. It's amazing. So the value that you bring to your strategic account professionals, how are they reacting to what you're saying and what's working best for them?
Yeah, absolutely. No. This is again, it's a good question because it's about, you're saying really in terms of the value. So to answer that question, Let me do the following. Let's take Stephen Covey's end in mind.
Yes.
Let me first of all ask you a question and then answer you. How many SAMs are part of the SAMA community at SAMA today? Roughly. Must be
Oh, how
thousands,
many?
right?
Yeah. Oh, thousands for sure.
Thousands,
Absolutely.
yeah. Thousands
Yeah.
globally. Now, imagine those thousands of SAMs in the SAMA community, and imagine for a moment that all of them have this heightened level of gravitas. Gravitas is a level of presence. It's a level of confidence when you walk into a room. It's humble. It's not overpowering. It's not assertive. It's not arrogance, but it's a sense of presence that you give to others that makes them respect you. So that's gravitas. The other thing is think about these SAMs having growth mindset, having built resiliency through adversity, and also developing character that's authentic. So all of these people understand and realize what they are good at, what they are strong at, and they make better versions of themselves. And finally, can you imagine these SAMs having engaged with their customers and created the status of a trusted strategist, which is full trust, full respect, and 100% in that relationship? Can you imagine how that would look? That's just like the bar is really, really high. So when I think about what we want to bring to the SAM community and the value we bring, we're focusing on a journey that we want to take them down, which is about self-discovery, which is not about tool bags and concepts and principles and designs. It's about understanding who you are, what your true potential is, and how can you bring about what we call authentic self. Yeah. We call this is like standing out and showing up differently. I've started to use that quite a lot in explaining what we do at CXO Impact, because ultimately our purpose and the value we do is we're going to help SAMs to become better versions of themselves so that in front of their customers and inside their own organizations, they stand out and they show up differently. So they're memorable and they're people that people want to work with. Does that kind of answer your question there, Harvey?
It it does, and it makes I'm suddenly pictures of the great Sams that I've had the pleasure of working with
Yeah.
are that they're coming back into my brain. And we had one gentleman who had one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world as his customer.
Yes.
He traveled all around the world like you did with your customers, but he wore always wore a pair of blue jeans,
Yes.
short sleeve white shirt,
Yes.
and he had a little hat.
Wow.
And that's how he went. It didn't matter whether it was a board meeting
Yes.
or, on the shop floor, eh, getting, right up next to where the problem was to help solve it.
Yes.
But he was absolutely 100% authentic,
You see,
and
that's a wonderful
people loved
story.
him.
Harvey, it takes a lot of courage to be able to be confident on presenting who you really are. And I think that certainly, as I've had a very traditional kind of like coaching and training through a very corporate and a fantastic regime of bringing somebody to excellence. But what happens is that you follow certain ways of speaking, behaving, certain ways in which you show up and your brand, and that's all good. And it's very important to do all of that. But you have to do what you've just explained, which is be comfortable in who you are and how you want others to see you, because that's how they'll respect you. So that's a great story, and I really admire that person. I must say I haven't actually done that ever. Got into the boardroom with a pair of jeans, but I used to work for a CEO up in Madison, Wisconsin, where you actually are based as well, and he used to come to the board meetings exactly like that, with a pair of jeans and a sports shirt, because he was 100% comfortable with who he was. And that was fine too.
That's amazing. Well, and I suppose that this transcends not only meetings with the customer, but it's all the internal meetings that you have to get help from your company and to help the customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that it's got to work on both sides of the equation. It can't just be one. It's like I show you this face and then I show you a different face inside. I mean,
Yeah.
as you say, you're being judged by your internal people all the time as well. They know
And
you better, but it's important.
but I think you may have come on a point there, Harvey, which I think is probably one of the biggest important points for SAMs, is that SAMs, when I was a SAM, it was very difficult for me to get anything done unless I was supported by my own organization. And some of the biggest hurdles that you have in life as a SAM is convincing your peers, your managers, your executives to support what you want to do and represent the customer and be an ambassador of the customer. And as I reflect on some of the things that we've done when I was in Abbott, with strategic account management. And there are some great things that we did. We built strategy, and we had the best in practice of recruiting SAMs, and we did some fantastic things for the first time. But now, as I look back into that journey with what I know today, and I wished I'd known what I know today, some of the most difficult things for me was, for example, why was it difficult to get access and entry to C executives? Why was that? Why was it difficult in negotiations? Why did it feel bad? Why did it feel like a battle? Why did it feel like as if I had to go in and bat for my own company? And worse was, why was it so difficult to convince people in my own company to do what the right thing was for customers? And now I realize that we focused so much on technique and tools and processes and on the customer, trying to convince them, that we lost sight of the fact that the things and the challenges I mentioned are all humanistic things. They're about how you win relationships inside the company. It's about how you forge those relationships which are authentic and trustful. Same thing that you do with the executive in your customer's place. You have to do that inside. And yet, we're not taught these things when you're at the workplace. So that was one of the missions of my organization, was we have to go back to these basic fundamentals of humanistic behaviors in business. How can you tell a business story, but do it in a humanistic and a visual way that's authentic? How do you show up and speak and communicate and engage so that the other person feels that you are humble, you are genuine, and you're there for the right reason? Do you see what I mean? All this chemistry that happens, Harvey, in a conversation, it happens in the subconscious. So we have to try to help the SAMs to make it a conscious process.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So can you give us an example? Have you got a story for us that talks about, a successful implementation of strategic account management that you're proud of?
Yeah, I could do, but I'll probably bore the audience because they probably have better ones than I do. But I think what is more worthy here is some of the things I just mentioned. Is I think what's really, really important here is lessons learned. And I'll tell you an example without mentioning any names, but I mentioned to you the scenario of negotiation. Yeah. And I mentioned to you that why are negotiations so tough? Yeah. And when I was in Abbott, some of the things that I was fortunate to do was I was given the privilege to negotiate multi-million dollar deals with executives, with real CEOs standing on the other side of the table. And I have to say that that was something that I'd never done before. I went to all sorts of negotiation training, and some of them were excellent. I developed all the things that they taught me, and I felt I was very well equipped. But when I got into that room and I started to speak, and I started to engage, it wasn't always fun. It wasn't always the way I thought it would go. And it used to upset me. And my emotions used to take the better of me. It affected the way I behaved. It affected the way I spoke, the things I said. And I reflect on all those moments. We did win some great deals, lucrative deals, profitable deals, win-win deals. But Harvey, had I known today that negotiation was more around emotional intelligence, and in particular, it was about emotions in the subconscious that were going on. You know, how people perceive you, the things you say, the things you behave with, the things you do, all of these things cloud your judgment. Had I known that preparing for a negotiation requires me to be more self-aware so that I can control my emotions, I think that I would have become what we call a conscious negotiator, which is being aware of how I show up in front of somebody. And I think that would have put me in a much, much better position. Now, I can't go back and redo what I did in the past, but that's the wisdom and that's the learning we want to bring at CXO Impact. Our negotiation courses are not like other people's negotiation courses because they do them really well. We're covering more, and we're actually combining the principles of negotiation together with the humanistic side, about the mindset and about the emotional intelligence, about how to become more self-aware. And when you're in a negotiation, what's your self-preparation before you walk in? You're going to get judged the moment you walk in. So can you see how my story is more around tough lessons learned? And I know that we might have won those deals, but I think we could have done a better job. And I think that we might have showed up differently and showed up better and showed up well if we'd known what we know today. So that's the kind of thing I think those stories for me live on for a long time. And that's the kind of thing I'd love to help Sam's with.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you and thinking about, how to put that into practice, and if you're a Sam, and the first thing that comes to mind is when you're headed into a negotiation is, first of all, am I prepared? Do I
Yes.
know what my company can support, what they can't support? I always used to ask the question of myself, where's the wall? I, because a lot of times in a negotiation, they're going to push us hard. And, you at some point in time, you have to say, I can't I can't give any more in the way that you're asking it.
Yes.
Could we talk about maybe some ways that we could achieve the same outcome, but in a different way?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And, that kind of thing, and to be prepared for it. But you also, what that's the negotiation tactic part of it. What's hard to do, I think, is also to measure the sense of the other people that are in the room that you're speaking to, and how are they actually reacting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you sum that up. And I think you've touched on a lot of great foundational points there. And here's what I would add to that. For me now, negotiation is a dance. And that sounds funny in a way, but it's exactly a dance. It starts much before that negotiation moment, that meeting, that very important meeting, that courtship and that dancing that you have to do with the main negotiator and the negotiator's team. That dancing and coordinating, that aligning, that building trust, that understanding of each other as humans, that that authentic character that they are and you are, that constant practicing of that dance takes you into the negotiation dance. When you're in the negotiation dance, the moment before you walk in, I would take a deep breath now and I would say, I'm about to do the performance of my life in this dance with this customer. before I go in, how do I feel? Am I good? Am I okay? Now, what we do, Harvey, is we go in, and the moment we're waiting in the waiting room before we step in, before they open the door, we're thinking about the P&L, we're thinking about the margins, we're thinking about the concessions, we're thinking about they're gonna push on price, and I've got to keep my price high, and my boss is with me, and have I got everybody there who can answer the questions, because I don't know everything. All this is rattling around in your head. And here's the thing: can you imagine walking in a negotiation with that going on in your head? The other person's going to see it, they're going to feel it, because we're human beings. So what we're going to coach Sam's on is our negotiation programs are around, you've got to do the fundamentals of planning. That's important. Get the right team there, get to know your customer, get the deal ready, get all that. That's fundamental. But now consciously practice on yourself about how you're going to show up when you walk into that room. And when you're in there, how will you maintain that conscious effort to be a great human business partner, right? And that's how you get a win-win. And so my story overlaps with yours, but it adds a few of those layers that we're focusing on, if that makes sense.
It really does. I mean, I wish I would have had this conversation with you 40 years ago. I'm
If,
serious.
if I'd met myself like 15 years later, back there, I think I would have learned a lot more.
So this is fascinating, Janti. All good things have to come to an end, but I'd love to ask you one more question. Your article in the spring issue of the of SAMA's Velocity magazine states that for strategic account management to be successful, there needs to be a foundation built on holistic customer engagement that touches both the heart and the mind. Just to kind of tie this all together for us, can you talk about the heart and the mind? I mean, especially in the business that you were in, and you the physical heart and the physical mind. It's that how they work together to make things happen. That's the part that's amazing.
Thank you, Harvey. Harvey, like we're excited about that article, because that article is our first article on growth mindset and gravitas and structured thinking, where we're introducing the SAMA community to what this is all about. Now, when I and Keshini, who's our mindset coach, we sat down to write that article, we started with this premise, which is successful businesses is all about how people work together, they understand each other to achieve great things. And therefore, great business results are as a result of human beings working together for a common goal. And yet, we place so much emphasis in the SAM community on other foundational skills, competencies, knowledge. And you and I now know, and we both align on this because we've spoken about this, is that's given as that's foundational. Everybody expects that you must have that. So now what is the difference? And the difference is these humanistic skills are not taught to us at school. They're not taught to us at university. If you're lucky, you get taught at home by your parents or your grandparents or great friends, but they're also not taught at work, because nobody at work is an expert on how to deal with humans, right? Human resources. I'm sorry about that, but you know where I'm coming from.
Oh
But
yeah.
here's the thing: a lot of business success happens in the subconscious, where we have no control. And so this article talks about heart and the mind, is how do you start to take control of the things that before were happening where you didn't have control, but they had massive impact. So, for example, we speak in the article about you've got to start learning about being more self aware of yourself. Yeah. Where do you stand? How do you feel? Yeah. How are you thinking? We also talk about your collaboration ability, your ability to become confident and self authentic. Yeah. Um, being a character that you're comfortable with, like the gentleman who in the jeans and the t-shirt. It's learning this conscious ability to be able to do that. Now, the thing is, skill set and knowledge doesn't help you with that, because we speak in the article that customers and leaders are asking SAMs, stand out, show up differently, but they're not offering anything. They're not saying, and this is how you do it.
Yeah,
So what we've
it's the
come up
how
with,
part.
yeah, that's the thing. It's great to tell people to show up and be different, but how do you do it? So here's what we thought. Fundamentally, when you think about the heart and the mind, we start with the word gravitas. Gravitas simply is presence. It's when you walk into a room, how others perceive you, how you feel, and how you come across. Being in control of that is a very, very strong ability, but it's inherent in every SAM. We've just got to tap into it and help them with that. The other thing is being authentic and comfortable, and we spoke about that, being confident in other people's presence. Combining the heart and the mind is very, very powerful, Harvey, because the mindset that sits within us all controls our personality, controls how we say things, what we do, how we behave. And you and I talked about this a few minutes ago. People can see that and they judge you for it. And you've got to recognize that in every single situation that's critical for you. And so we want to help people with that. And the article talks about, yes, there are some tools that we have, like the power of pause we speak about, but these aren't tools which are frameworks, and these are tools which change your habits, they change your behavior and help you to make the right decisions about how to place meaning on situations, how you perceive situations, and how you make decisions to act. Because when you take the action, it has a ripple effect. So the article is very, very clearly outlining that for SAMs, if you think about either the iceberg model where you can see the tip and nothing at the bottom, the top part of the iceberg is where structured thinking takes place. And it's where a lot of companies are coaching their people, right? How to be structured, how to have frameworks, design, all these kind of things, which is good and important. But underneath the iceberg, it's the subconscious stuff. It's you as a human, your mindset, your personality, your emotional intelligence. It's how you show up. And the new way is combining those two, the top and the bottom of the iceberg, so that you're working together in conjunction, in terms of what the heart is saying and what the mind is telling. And that's how we want to really support our CAMs in the SAMA community to be able to show up and stand out differently. So the article, very simple, easy reading, but it connects all those different factors. So I'm very excited that you'll be bringing that into the Velocity magazine, and I thank you for considering that. Thank you.
Oh, this is this is what we live for. This is what SAM is all about. And, being able to work with people like you just makes me proud
Thank
to
you.
know you. And, to be able to work with folks and help them. And I think it really boils down to, what's it really striking me is that people are so good at evaluating you from the moment they meet you.
Yes, yes.
And if you're not ready for that moment, you're creating a mountain for yourself to climb that you may never reach the top of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Harvey, I
But
love that.
if you connect with them right away and show them who you are and they show you who they are, we can do beautiful things together.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's, the one final thing is I didn't mention it, but it is so fundamental to everything we've said. Everybody's heard about active listening. Everybody knows that. Everybody says, oh, you've got to do more active listening, listen louder. But Harvey, here's the problem, is that listening louder and active listening, when you meet people, isn't really just about hearing what they're saying. It's about feeling and sensing how they are feeling and what they are saying and why they are saying what they are saying. There's a different layer of active listening, and that's how engagement builds. You know, this courtship that we have between humans in business and in personal life, you know, we don't place enough emphasis on this at home or at the workplace. And what we'd love to do in CXO Impact is to help our SAMs with not only becoming great strategic account managers in their business, but becoming great people back at home and with their friends and their families, because these skills are transferable. Yeah.
Well, and gosh, you made me had really touched a nerve in a good way. You know, without your family and their support,
Yep.
if things aren't good at home,
Yeah.
it's going to be really hard for you. You know, you've really got to be balanced,
Absolutely.
and you've
Absolutely.
got to be the person at home that you are at work, and you've
Yes.
got to be the person within your business that you are at home and at work. And you've got to be that person when you're in front of your customers. And
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And it's
I
a
mean,
journey as well, Harvey, isn't it? I mean, I think what, you know, we've done many classes with many companies over the last couple of years. And this journey, it starts with people accepting that it's okay to be who they are, because it's not what they've heard before. People have been telling them to be different. You've got to change. If you want to fit in, you've got to do something different. We're saying something completely different. We're saying you are so unique. You are so special. We need to tap into what it is that you have. That is that point. And we need to get that across to your customer, right? And we're going to help you to do that. And that's refreshing for people. And it gives them a sense of self-confidence, self-awareness, and they start slowly to change the way they show up because they feel comfortable about it. Yeah. Why is it that people can accept them at home, but not at work? Why is that? That's not okay. So we've got to help them with that. So some of the things that, you know, we're doing, I'm really glad that, you know, it's having a ripple effect into these SAMs. They're taking it back home, they're taking it to their friends, and they're open with it. People are so open to do the difficult things in life, which is to try to change the way they show up. And it's nothing to do with remembering tools and knowledge and all those kind of things that we've been teaching them. It's all in their own control. It's in their own physiology.
and with that, oh my gosh, I feel like I could talk with you for the rest of the day, but
Thank you, Harvey. Likewise.
our time has come to an end. Janti, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing.
you.
Thank you so much for bringing this unique view on what it takes to be a great Sam. I hope that all of our listeners will listen and take it on board, because it makes all the difference in the world to your success.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on the podcast today. You know, our organization is so excited to be part of the SAMA community. We'll be there this year with you in SAMA. And, you know, we're learning a lot from your organization and from the SAMs themselves. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be with you today.
Pleasure's all mine.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope today's wisdom will lead you down the path of experiencing success in your profession. Remember, the key to successful strategic account management is discovering where your customer wants to go and helping them get there. Subscribe to our podcasts at strategicaccounts.org. We hope you will leave a positive rating and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. If there's something we can do to improve our podcasts, please let us know. That's all for today. See you on the next one.